If you've ever watched a woman wake up one morning and act like the life you built together belongs to somebody else, like your marriage is a house she suddenly doesn't recognize, then you already know the special kind of silence that follows. You're lying there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the last year like game film, trying to find the exact moment the ground shifted. And if you haven't lived it, you probably know a man who has. This hits more men than anyone wants to admit. And it blindsides good men because they were trained to believe one dangerous idea: that stability is protection, that if you provide, stay consistent, keep your nose clean, and don't create drama, you earn safety. You don't. Not automatically. Stability can build a strong marriage, but stability can also mask a slow psychological drift until it becomes a sudden moral collapse. The outside looks calm, the calendar looks normal, and then, out of nowhere, you're standing in the ruins of a life you thought was locked in. Stay with me, because this story starts quiet and ends with lessons most men only learn the expensive way. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Marcus. This is The Hidden Code, a place for men who want clarity in relationships and self-development through practical psychology. No comforting lies, no theory for theory's sake, just patterns, mechanisms, and moves you can actually use. Today's story comes from a viewer I'll call Ethan. Ethan is 44, senior architect at a mid-sized firm in the Midwest, married 17 years, two kids, 13 and 10. The kind of life society sells as the end game: stable income, decent house, quiet neighborhood, solid family routine. No chaos, no police calls, no drama, no obvious cracks. And then, almost overnight, it all collapsed. Ethan wrote, "I'm sharing this because I keep seeing men walk into the same trap. They think it can't happen to them. I thought that too. I was wrong." That sentence should make you uneasy because this pattern doesn't announce itself like a villain. It enters like a weather change, a few degrees at a time. And men, especially responsible men, ignore it because they're trained to manage external problems, not internal shifts. Ethan met Lauren when they were both 26. She worked in marketing at a growing tech company. He was finishing grad school. Long hours, big plans. They met at a friend's backyard cookout, bonded over hiking trails and obscure documentaries nobody else wanted to sit through. Lauren stood out, not because she demanded attention, but because she didn't chase it. Athletic, put together without trying too hard. The kind of woman other women quietly compared themselves to. Ethan liked her looks, sure, but what hooked him was her steadiness. She wasn't addicted to applause. She didn't require constant reassurance. She seemed grounded, solid. That matters because most men don't marry the loudest woman in the room. They marry the woman who feels like peace. They marry the woman who seems stable. They married at 28, first kid at 30, second at 33. Lauren stepped back from full-time work to focus on the kids, keeping a toe in the water with freelance projects. Ethan's career moved steadily. Promotions, respect, eventually partnership. Life settled into rhythm. Date nights, family trips, quiet evenings after the kids were asleep. Ethan described it as comfortable, not fireworks, not chaos, not the roller coaster of early love, just reliable. The kind of love people call mature. What Ethan didn't understand was that maturity feels safe to a secure person and suffocating to an insecure person who never built an internal source of worth. That's the fork in the road. Same marriage, same stability. Two very different psychological interpretations. As Lauren approached her late 30s, The changes were subtle enough to ignore. She started going to the gym more. 4 days a week became 6, then 7. New workout clothes, brighter, tighter, more skin. Ethan assumed she was taking better care of herself. That's what husbands are supposed to think, right? Encourage health, support growth. Then the phone habits changed. Fitness accounts, life coaches. Reinvention, quotes about rediscovering yourself, posts about not settling, choosing you, breaking free from cages you didn't know you were in. Ethan didn't feel threatened. He felt mildly confused. Like, okay, self-improvement. Maybe she's motivated. Maybe it's a phase. Then came the mirror moments. Lauren would stand in front of the mirror and pick herself apart. Crow's feet, neck, arms. She'd ask Ethan if he noticed. He'd say she looked great, and she'd snap back, "You're not really looking." That should have landed heavier than it did, because that wasn't just insecurity. That was a demand for a specific kind of attention. Attention that didn't feel married, familiar, or safe. She didn't just want love. She wanted proof. She wanted a measurement, and the ruler had changed. Ethan thought this was normal, aging anxiety. He didn't see that she wasn't simply improving herself. She was auditing herself, comparing herself to a new standard. Here's the principle most men never get taught. Comfort in the wrong psychological soil doesn't grow loyalty. It grows restlessness. And once restlessness takes root, it doesn't stay in one corner of the mind. It spreads into everything: desire, identity, interpretation of the past, willingness to sacrifice, even basic respect. Around her 40th birthday, Lauren started saying she felt invisible. Not dramatic, almost casual, like she was commenting on the weather. She'd mentioned how waiters didn't flirt anymore, how men held doors for younger women but barely made eye contact with her. She'd point out women in their 20s and say, "I used to look like that," with this mix of nostalgia and resentment. Ethan brushed it off. He told himself, midlife thoughts, normal stuff. But those weren't observations. They were warnings. Because what she was really saying was, my identity was partly built on being seen, and that supply is shrinking. For her birthday, Ethan did what a thoughtful husband would do: high-end hotel, spa treatments, good food, time away from the kids. On paper, perfect. In reality, Lauren was somewhere else the whole weekend, smiling but distant, laughing but distracted. Half her attention stayed glued to her phone. That's when Ethan noticed something else. She'd started posting more. Gym selfies, coffee shop shots, carefully angled photos with captions about new chapters and self-love. And the feedback came fast. Mostly women, cheering, but also men Ethan didn't know. Compliments, messages, the digital version of pursuit. Lauren checked those comments constantly, and Ethan felt a shift in his gut. He couldn't explain. Let me translate that feeling into something clearer. That was the moment he realized he wasn't competing with another man yet. He was competing with a new source of validation. After 40, things accelerated. Lauren started going out more with a friend named Tara. Recently divorced, loudly empowered, loudly allergic to accountability. The kind of person who frames every boundary as oppression and every impulse as authenticity. Tara was dating a personal trainer 8 years younger and posted about it like it was a trophy ceremony. Lauren absorbed the message like oxygen. Girls' nights started ending at 1 a.m., then 2. When Ethan asked questions, Lauren snapped back, "You're controlling. I've spent years raising kids. I deserve fun." Ethan didn't push. He didn't want to be that guy. This is where many men make a fatal mistake. They confuse restraint with wisdom. They think, if I'm calm, if I'm reasonable, if I don't react, I'm being mature. Sometimes you're not being mature. Sometimes you're being passive in the face of disrespect. Sometimes your understanding is interpreted as weakness. And weakness invites escalation. Her appearance shifted again. Highlights, then fully blonde. Ripped jeans, crop tops, leather jackets. Objectively, she looked good, but there was an edge to it, a hunger, like she was trying to chase a version of herself that time was already taking away. Then intimacy disappeared, not overnight, gradually. Tired, stressed, not in the mood. Weeks turned into months when Ethan tried to talk about it. Lauren accused him of only caring about sex. But men know the difference between wanting sex and wanting connection. Ethan didn't just want release, he wanted closeness. He wanted to feel like he still mattered. He wanted to feel chosen. Every attempt became an argument, so eventually he stopped trying. And that was the final opening. Once the husband stops reaching, the story in her head becomes easier to sell. See, we're roommates. See, there's no spark. See, I'm justified. Then she asked for space, a weekend alone, time to think, a solo retreat idea, couples therapy, but with a tone that felt procedural rather than hopeful. The sessions were brutal. Lauren talked about losing herself, about not being seen, about motherhood, erasing her identity. Ethan listed years of support, flexibility, sacrifice. The therapist nodded at Lauren and asked Ethan what he could do differently. Ethan walked out feeling like the villain in his own marriage. And then came the calm, the kind of calm that should terrify you. One Tuesday night, kids at their grandparents', Lauren sat at the kitchen table with a glass of wine. Relaxed, centered, too centered. We need to talk. That's when she told him about another man, a guy from the gym, younger, recently separated. He sees me, she said. He makes me feel alive. 6 months. That's how long it had been going on. When Ethan asked if it had turned physical, she said, that's not what matters. What mattered, according to her, was that she felt something with him she hadn't felt with Ethan in years. Safe, she said. Predictable. Appreciated, but not desired. That word cuts deep for men because it strikes at the core of what men want to be in a woman's world. Not just useful, wanted. This is the moment many men still think the story can turn around. They think honesty means hope. Usually it doesn't. Because by the time someone tells you the truth this calmly, they've been rehearsing it internally for months. The decision was made long before you were informed. What shattered Ethan wasn't only the betrayal, it was the realization that the marriage had already ended in Lauren's mind. The affair didn't break the relationship, it exposed the break that was already there. Over the next days, details came out in fragments. Late night texts, coffee meetups, conversations that crossed lines long before bodies did. Yes, it became physical more than once. No, she wasn't sure she loved the other man, but she was sure she didn't love Ethan the way she used to. She repeated the same set of words that ends many marriages: safe, reliable, predictable. She appreciated everything he'd done. And then she delivered the sentence that quietly murders a family: I love you, but I'm not in love with you. That sentence usually means, I want the moral comfort of saying I'm not a bad person while I do something that will hurt you. Lauren framed her adult life as a cage. Girlfriend, wife, mother, roles she claimed erased her identity. She wanted to know what it felt like to be wanted for herself, not for what she provided. When Ethan asked About the kids, she said they'd adjust. Kids are resilient. Better this than growing up in a marriage that was dead inside. That's how these stories are told now. Clean, rational, almost noble. Like the person walking away is brave and the people left behind are just collateral. Within a month, she moved out. Downtown apartment, new routine. The kids split time. Confused, angry. Their daughter barely spoke to her for weeks. Later, Ethan found out through mutual friends that the gym guy wasn't the first, just the one who stuck long enough to matter. Her divorced friends had cheered her on the entire time, framing it as liberation, a glow up, a rebirth. Her social media turned into a highlight reel. Restaurants, concerts, weekend trips, captions about choosing happiness and living authentically. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive, mostly women. So proud of you. You deserve this. Finally, choosing yourself. Meanwhile, Ethan was sitting at a kitchen table with his kids trying to explain why their family no longer existed. Predictably, the relationship with the other man lasted 7 months. He wasn't ready for kids, schedules, ex-husband dynamics, adult responsibility. He wanted the exciting version of Lauren, not the real-world version with obligations. When it ended, Lauren briefly tried to reconnect, starting fresh. New chapter. Ethan declined, not out of rage, but out of clarity. The woman he married wouldn't have done this, and the woman standing in front of him wasn't that person anymore. Now here's where we stop reacting emotionally and start thinking structurally, because this didn't happen by accident. And it wasn't simply Ethan failed as a husband. That's the trap men fall into, believing if they had done X, the outcome would have changed. Sometimes that's true. But in this pattern, the problem isn't a lack of effort. The problem is an internal identity crisis that uses the relationship as a stage. For many women, and men to be fair, ages 35 to 45 can create a collision. Your body changes, your social value shifts, your future becomes finite in a way it didn't before. Mortality stops being an idea and becomes a feeling. If your identity was built on youth, desirability, being chosen, and being seen, then that shift doesn't just sting. It destabilizes the entire self-image. From adolescence onward, attention can become a constant stream. Compliments, pursuit, social proof, reinforcement. It's dopamine. It's identity fuel. When the stream slows down, panic can set in. And here's the key detail men miss. Attention from a husband often doesn't hit the same as attention from a stranger. Not because the husband doesn't matter, but because the husband's desire feels guaranteed. It doesn't answer the question that's haunting the background. Do I still have it? Am I still desirable to men who have options? The other man answered that question instantly. Younger, new, uncertain. He chose her when he didn't have to. That validation hits harder than years of a devotion ever could, because it's not love. It's a test. And she passed. Brain chemistry supports this. New attraction floods the system with dopamine, novelty, uncertainty, anticipation. Long-term relationships stabilize into something calmer. Trust, routine, safety. That's healthier. That's sustainable. But for people who depend on external validation, calm feels like emptiness. So Lauren didn't fall in love in the mature sense. She chased a chemical spike. She confused intensity with truth. And once she crossed the line, her mind protected her with another mechanism. It rewrote history. 17 years became a prison. The good years shrank. Stability turned into oppression. Sacrifice became control. Ethan's reliability became boring. This is called revisionist memory, when someone makes a harmful choice and then edits the past to justify the present. I didn't destroy something good, I escaped something bad. And everyone around her reinforced the edit. Friends framed destruction as empowerment. Social media rewarded the performance. Therapy validated feelings but didn't interrogate motives. Nobody asked the uncomfortable question: are you pursuing freedom or running from aging? Ethan couldn't compete with novelty. You can't out dopamine insecurity. This wasn't a failure of effort. It was an identity collapse that used the marriage as a scapegoat. Now let's get practical, because stories are useful, but patterns are protection. By the time Ethan saw the pattern clearly, the damage was done. That's what most men struggle with. Not the loss itself, but realizing the warning signs were there long before the explosion. They just didn't look dangerous at the time. Here are the red flags Ethan missed: individually harmless, collectively lethal. 1. A sudden obsession with appearance that goes beyond health. Not, I want to feel strong, but I need to be seen. The energy isn't wellness, it's desperation. 2. Constant comparison to younger women. Not inspiration, competition. The subtext is fear. 3. Casual comments about invisibility. That's not small talk. That's a crack in identity. 4. A sharp increase in social media validation seeking. More selfies, more thirst trap adjacent posts, more checking comments, more dependence on strangers' reactions. 5. Influencer ideology replacing personal values, reinvention slogans. Choose you. Stop settling. The language becomes borrowed and radical. 6. New friends who normalize chaos. Divorced, resentful, or impulsive women who frame betrayal as growth and accountability as oppression. 7. Requests for space framed as self-discovery. Space can be healthy, but combined with secrecy, it's often preparation. 8. Guarded phone behavior, a new password, phone face down, quick exits, defensive reactions to basic questions. 9. Decreased intimacy paired with moral superiority. Not just less sex, less affection, less warmth, less closeness. And if you bring it up, you're immature. 10. Therapy that feels like a courtroom, not a repair shop. If sessions are about building a case against you instead of rebuilding the bond, it's already heading toward an exit. Another major sign is history rewriting. When good years get rebranded as bad ones. When your sacrifices become manipulation. When stability becomes oppression. That's not growth. That's justification. And once someone starts rewriting the past to excuse present behavior, they're already halfway out the door. Modern culture accelerates this. We live in a time that sells a dangerous slogan. If you feel it, it's true. Discomfort gets labeled oppression. Commitment gets framed as optional. Duty gets mocked as weakness, and social media rewards a performance, especially the performance of reinventing yourself. Every "you go girl" comment becomes moral permission. What gets erased in that narrative are the kids, the long-term consequences, the reality that novelty expires fast, but responsibility doesn't. Lauren's new relationship burned out in months. The family she left behind didn't regenerate on a new timeline. Here's the hardest truth for men who love deeply. Ethan couldn't have fixed Lauren's existential crisis. Could he have been more romantic, more spontaneous, more attentive? Possibly. And those things matter in healthy relationships. But in this kind of identity collapse, those improvements don't solve the core hunger. Because the hunger isn't, I need my husband to do more. The hunger is, I need proof I still matter to the world. That is not something you can supply forever because it's not a relationship. Need. It's a self worth leak. Some people face aging with depth. They grieve youth quietly and build meaning elsewhere. Purpose, craft, family, faith, legacy, service. They mature. Others try to outrun the clock. They detonate their life and call it freedom. Your job isn't to gamble decades of your life hoping you guessed right. Your job is to choose well, lead well, and protect yourself realistically. So, what does protection look like without becoming bitter? It looks like standards, structure, and self respect. First, maintain your own identity. A man who makes his wife the center of his universe is vulnerable, not because love is weak, but because dependence is. Keep purpose outside the relationship, work that matters, health that you respect, friends who keep you grounded, skills you're proud of. Second, stay physically sharp and not for vanity, because discipline is stability. Your body is your baseline. When you let yourself go, you don't just lose attractiveness, you lose edge. And edge is part of masculine polarity. Third, keep your social world alive. Men who isolate become easy to destabilize. A strong social base protects your mind and your standards. Fourth, don't reward disrespect with silence. Calm is good. Passivity is not. If boundaries are being tested, address it early. Not with rage, with clarity. This doesn't work for me. This crosses a line. We fix it or we change the arrangement. Fifth, understand incentives and environments. Watch her friends. Watch her media diet. Watch what she idolizes. People become what they repeatedly consume. Sixth, know your legal and financial position. This is not romantic, but it's intelligent. Love is not a substitute for strategy. If the signs escalate, document behavior. Protect assets. Know custody realities. Speak to a professional if needed. You don't do this to punish. You do it to avoid being destroyed by denial. Seventh, trust patterns over promises. Words are cheap when someone is rewriting their identity. Patterns are expensive. Patterns tell the truth before confession ever arrives. Ethan rebuilt. He focused on his kids, got his health back, reconnected with friends, regained trust in his own perception. That's a big one because betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It tries to convince you you're stupid for not seeing it. Lauren continued searching. New relationships, same language, same captions, same chase, still hunting a feeling that can't last. Meanwhile, the kids went to therapy, learning early that emotions can override vows, and stability can disappear if fear goes unexamined. Ethan wrote one final line that stuck with me. I don't hate her. I feel sorry for her. She's running from something inevitable, and she destroyed something real, trying to escape it. That's the quiet tragedy under these stories. This isn't about hating women. It's about understanding reality. Some women and some men age with wisdom. Others panic. Your responsibility is to know who you're building with, to remain awake even when life feels comfortable, and to never confuse nothing is wrong today with nothing can go wrong. If you take one lesson from this, let it be this. Stability is not security unless it's paired with self-awareness, boundaries, and mutual respect. Awareness is protection. Standards are protection. A strong life outside the relationship is protection. And the willingness to act early before denial becomes disaster, that is protection.